everyone. I'm Karen Rustad, the instructor for today. Oh, thank you. That's Asheesh, our lead TA. We have several other TAs around the room. They can wave their hands or stand up or scream. Stand up. Mostly in the back, who you can ask for help at any time with anything. Yeah, so today we're going to be learning about a Python web framework called Django. We're going to be building a basic bookmarking application using it. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to be going through everything on the screen. At some points, it could be going relatively fast. I'm hoping that most people will be able to keep up. But if not, it's OK. Because the way the tutorial is structured is we're going to have check-ins throughout the tutorial where you can pull the latest code from the server and keep going. So even if you get stuck or something isn't working, you'll still be able to keep going with the tutorial. So yeah. So let's start with, please follow along. The tutorial curriculum is on the web at openhatch.org/wiki/Django for designers. That will be helpful for both copying and pasting commands, seeing what the heck is going on, because you definitely don't want to just try typing along with me. Yeah, so let's start our project. Well, the first step, if I can get a terminal window open, is to activate our environment if you haven't already. So let me.
Can I quickly ask, has anyone here not done laptop setup instructions? Still learning. Okay.
Oh boy. Okay, so the way that we do that is inside our Django for designers.
Yeah, so basically in that case, if you have them follow along, and then when there's the next breakish point, just make sure it's working. All the commands you'll need to type are written out on the website.
Yeah. So we run source./bin/activate, and we have our environment. You can see that it's active because we have this thing in parentheses at the front. And so what that did is it's activating a special Python environment just for this project that knows about Django and any other dependencies for the tutorial. And by keeping all our dependencies in this environment, we can keep them from interfering with any other projects you have on your computer. If you've got multiple projects and they're using, say, different versions of Django, having different environments for each of the projects is often a good thing. The next thing we need to do is to create a branch in our Git repository. So if you're not familiar with Git, Git is a version control system that tracks changes you make to files as you go along inside whatever the Git repository is. And so you make commits, which are like save points if you've played video games. They are points that are named that you can go back to if you screw up and you need to backtrack. And they also help. It's like saving plus, so it's pretty great. Git also has a feature called branches, which means that you can have like multiple parallel timelines within your code. So if you want to go off and experiment and try to build some new feature, but you don't want to mess up the rest of your repository, or you're working on multiple features at once, branches are pretty useful for that. So we're going to be using them today to keep track of your code as you follow along and make sure that it's up to date with the branches on the server. That's how we're doing the checkpoint thing. Yeah, so to make sure that you've got all the branches you're going to need, we need to run git fetch. Hopefully that returns nothing. It might download some stuff depending on how early you set up your laptop. Anyway, OK, we're up to date. Now we're going to make our first branch. The way that we do that is git branch my branch. Oops, I can't spell. 1 origin pre part 1. So we're making this branch based on what we expect the state to be at the beginning of part 1. All right, we made the branch, and then we have to check out the branch to actually enter it. Great. You can see what branch you are in at any time by just typing git branch. And we can see there's 2 branches, and we're in my branch 1. OK, now that we've done that, let's start our project. The way that we do that is we run a command Django admin.py start project, and we'll call our project my project. And okay, that didn't return an error. So what happened? Well, we can see suddenly there's this my project folder that didn't used to be there. Let's cd into it. Run ls again. Okay, there's a manage.py file in here. There's some sort of directory, and it's got more files in it. So what are all of these? The manage.py file is for running various command line commands in Django, pretty common ones like running the development server, things like that. The my project folder, Django as of 1.4 and forward, auto creates a folder within your project. It has the same name as your overall project name, and it just keeps all your project-related files all in one place. The myproject/init.py, that just tells Python that this is a Python module. Settings.py is where all the configuration for your app is going to go. And urls.py, we'll be getting to that later, but it's where you tell what URLs, what paths you want to be part of your app. So let's make sure that our project works right by running the development server. So we're going to use manage.py for that. So Python manage.py run server. Is this big enough, by the way? I can make the text larger if you want. OK, cool. And OK, so the development server is running. That's exciting. If you go in your browser to localhost :8000, yay, it worked. Exciting. Yeah, so Django comes with some local server software included, which makes it really easy to track your progress and see what the heck you're doing. It is not hardy enough for actual production use. Please don't use it for any application that you want other people to actually use. It's not meant for that. It's just meant for you. But yeah, so great. That started and worked. If you look in the terminal, when we did that, there's this nice logging message. We can see that it was a GET request, that it returned 200, which means, yay, everything worked. And there's some other gobbledygook. Cool. So we can exit the server by either hitting Control-C or, yeah. And then one useful tip is to have one terminal window that you just use to run command lines, commands on, and another one that runs your Django server all the time, because then you don't have to keep turning it on and off, on and off. So we can do that if you make a second window in the same directory. We back up one directory. We have to activate our env again. You'll notice that it doesn't get activated automatically when we create a new window. So we source./bin/activate. And there we go. cd into my project. And then Python manage.py run the server. Great. Now, we might still have to restart it if we run into any errors, and that's just fine. But, great. So we'll move back to our main tab. All right, before we do anything else, now that we've created our project, let's commit our work. So let's run git status so we can see what Git thinks is going on. It noticed some untracked files. What that means is some files appeared that I don't have explicit instructions to track changes to yet, but thought you would like to know that. Well, we do want it to track the folder that we're in. We want it to track my project. So we run git add. We can run git status again, see what that did. And we can see that we're about to commit adding all of these new files. Great, that's exactly what we want to do. Git commit And we can call this commit for this tutorial. And committed. And if you run git log, you can see your commit at the very top. Oops. Hit Q to get out of that. All right, great. So we've committed our changes so far, and let's make some more. So in your text editor, let's open up that myproject/settings.py file that we saw. So settings.py. Yeah, because we need to configure our app. It doesn't know how to do that by itself. So in this file, we have a variable called databases that we want to edit. Oh my gosh, yes it is. Text, colors, How do I make you not awful, TextMate? If anyone happens to know where the option is to change the coloring, please let me know, because I'm having difficulty finding it. Well, that's kind of lame. Fortunately, all the code is also on the wiki, so if you can't read here, which you probably can, because oh god, yeah, sure, yeah. That's yeah, it's none of the obvious places. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
While we have you quickly paused, I want to mention some people haven't figured out that the tutorial link at the bottom of the handout has all the commands that you're typing. So now is a great time to use that link at the bottom of the handout, openhash.org/wiki/Django for designers, click on part 1, and then you'll always be in sync with what you're doing.
Yes, you can even copy and paste things from there, which
Really
you really will have to later. So really, you should have it open. All right, well, what we're doing here is there's this big databases dictionary that is where we're going to set up how we want Django to set up our databases. And so there's django.db.backends already written in there for you, but we have to tell it which backend to use. So today we're going to use SQLite 3, so we type .SQLite3. That's exciting. And then we also have to give our database a name, since that's required for SQLite 3. We'll just call it database.db. And if you actually look in your folder, there's no database.db file right now, but that's okay. Django will create it once it needs it. It just hasn't needed it yet. Yeah, hit save, and then let's commit our configuration. Git status. See, noticed that file changed. Git add my project. It's often a useful shortcut. If you add a folder, Git will add all of the files changes within that folder. So if you made changes to multiple files, this is a handy shortcut for that. Git status again. Yes, that's what we want. Git commit. Set up our database settings. Whew. Yeah, so even though we set Git to listen to settings.py earlier, it's still not going to add anything to a commit unless you explicitly tell it to. That's just the way that Git works. It's extra cautious. It's only going to commit things that you want it to commit. So still in our settings.py file, let's look for a variable called installed apps. It's towards the bottom. This is all the apps that Django knows about right now. And a bunch of them are already listed because they just come by default. We're going to add another app called South, which we're going to need, or if I can type South, because we're going to need that later. Make sure they're all strings, so make sure that there's quotes around South. It's not just South.
Can you copy and paste that blocking somewhere else?
I mean, it's all on the wiki too.
Yeah, but many people don't have it open at the moment.
Well, they should. Please. Please do.
I don't know about that. Okay, next.
Yes, I tried that, and apparently I can't. Or at least I don't know how.
Actually, down there in the status bar where it says
That's
Python.
better. Aha. Ooh. Yay! Awesome, thank you. Great. Now you can actually see what I did. I added South. It's right there. That's what I did. Okay. So all of these applications need to have some tables in our database in order to work properly. And so the way that we make Django make that happen is, after saving, we run a command python manage.py syncdb. And that's going to sync all the applications that Django knows about that are listed in installed apps. Okay, so it creates a bunch of stuff. It's going to ask if you want to create a super user. You should say yes. And it asks for some information. For the password, since no one's going to hopefully be hacking your app today, we'll just use super. Great. It synced all of our applications. That's exciting. So now, if you look back in this folder, remember database.db wasn't there before? Now it is. Because we ran syncdb, Django realized, oh, hey, I need a database file, and made it for us. All right. Now let's start our first app. So the way that we do that is python manage.py start app bookmarks. And now if you see what's there, there's a bookmarks folder now. Inside bookmarks, there's a bunch of files, models.py, test.py, and views.py. And then finally, in order to make sure Django knows about our new app, we have to go back to settings.py and add it, just like we added South. All right, let's commit our new app. Add bookmarks. This will just add everything inside the bookmarks folder. Let's check git status. Oh, we also want to add settings.py. Don't want to forget about that. Great. Now we can commit all our changes. If I can type. Made a bookmarks app. Boom. Great. We've made our first Django project and our first Django app. How are people doing? Okay. Yep. We're at the very end of part 1, so at the beginning of part 2, we resync. So even if we can't get through everything, we're going to keep going. Let's start part 2. Before starting part 2, well, it's at the top of the wiki page for part 2, but we're going to resync, which means that the branch you're going to create for part 2 is going to be based on the same code as everybody else in the room. So even if you didn't get through everything in part 1, you're still going to have all the code thus far. So the way that we do that is we make a new branch, similar to how we did before, only now it's my branch 2. And we're making it based on origin/pre-part 2. And we check out our new branch after we're done with that. Great. Did everyone manage to? Okay.
Yeah, I want to pause here and make really sure everyone is on the same page. So if you don't have the tutorial page open, the Django for Designers page, either raise your hand if you don't know how to find it, or open it now. Okay. Good. Keep raising your hand if you don't have the tutorial page open and want help finding it.
If people haven't finished their code, they might get an error when they actually switch to that branch.
What?
If people have been working through that first one but haven't actually committed it, they'll get an error trying to switch to that branch.
That's true. They'll need to.
Commit your changes or stash them.
Yeah. If you haven't committed all your changes at the point that we're going to switch, git stash is a reasonable thing to do, actually, here. So just run git stash if you haven't made it all the way through before. A git stash. So if you get a little error message that it's like you haven't committed everything, are you sure you want to switch branches? Run git stash and then run the checkout command. Mm-hmm.
So if we're all working against the same repository, how come our commits aren't interfering with each other when we're committing the same?
Because when you commit, you're committing just on your computer. The way that we're setting up these branches is they're based on like a completely different code path. Yeah. When you're in my branch to look at me or something, not at your computer, so I know how far we are along.
Yeah, anyone not with the Django for Designers page on your computer and needing help finding it, raise your hand. We will see. Anyone else having network problems? Raise your hand if you're having network problems. Okay. See if you can join a new Wi-Fi network I made called Temporary. And if that fixes your problems, then great. Otherwise, leave it again. Most of what we do will require the network. So slow is okay, but having still unresolved network problems? Well, I trust them. Really, really, really. If you're having network problems, raise your hand. You're all great? Okay, okay. Okay. Okay.
How are we doing? How many people have managed to make my branch 2?
Or rather, how many haven't?
Yeah, how many haven't? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yes? Where are you? Designers, not designers. Yes. And then at the bottom, so we're going to be at the beginning of part 2. Yeah. And what was the problem? No, I mean.
No, actually, I wasn't. No, I was trying to proceed for the.
Ah, okay. All right, it sounds like, do most people have my branch 2 mated? Maybe, possibly, hopefully. Because I think we should keep going in order to get through more of the material. Yeah, if you don't have the branch made, keep flagging TAs and they will help, and then that will be good. All right, so part 2. If you're not already on the part 2 wiki page, please go there. It's crucial to help follow along. So everyone's checked out their my branch 2, and if you do git branch, that's the branch you're in. Everybody for certain values of everybody, but hopefully everybody. All right, so one concept in Django that is important to understand is, or really in web development in general, is the idea of MVC, which stands for Model View Controller Separation. That idea that these different functions are separated and then talk to each other in controlled ways. Django is slightly different. There it's called MVT, so it's, or MTV rather, because MTV. Where it's models, views, and templates. And so on the wiki, there's this nice little diagram, sort of how all these things link together. In Django, a model is a Python representation of how your data gets stored in the database. So it's what ties the stuff you care about, the stuff that Django knows about, to the database. You write Python code in your models, and Django converts it in and out of SQL, which is the language spoken by our database. A view in Django handles a request that it gets from your website visitor. And what you do with that request is up to you. You could start a background process to send a fax to Tokyo whenever you get a request. You could provide some sort of HTTP response to the website visitor. You could give them a web page, which is most of what you probably want to do. It's just a function, and it returns something, and whatever it returns goes back to the person on the other end. And then templates in Django control how the data, how whatever you send them back, is presented. So usually what happens is a view gets together a bunch of data, and then the template is what makes that data appear in a particular way. The templates usually refer to some sort of static content, like a CSS file, a JavaScript file, something like that, some image files as part of making it look how it looks. And so keeping this separation in mind, the idea that the way the data is structured goes in one place, and the way that you figure out what you're going to, how you handle requests goes in another place, and how things look goes in another place. The idea that those have some sort of separation is key to understanding Django. And most web programming frameworks have some sort of separation along these lines, so it's a good concept to know in general. So the first step to writing our application is to design our URLs. So when a user is requesting a Django-powered page, the way that Django works is it looks at the URL that you sent and sees if it matches any of the URLs that it's supposed to serve. And if it matches, then it's like, okay, now I know what to do. I'll send you to this view now. And so it does this through regular expressions. Regular expressions, in a nutshell, are a really compact language for describing whether something matches a pattern or not. You can learn more about regular expressions in the section 7 of this tutorial, which we're not going to get to, but is full of extra material that you can peruse at your leisure if you're curious about a particular topic. You can also use regular expressions to capture text, which means that, okay, this matched this larger pattern. I care about this particular section of the string, so send me that. And so that's how URLs work. So back when we ran Start Project, we made a bunch of files. If you recall, inside my project, one of those files is urls.py. And so that's the file that we're going to need to edit in order to add our URLs. So if you haven't got the development server running already, let's get it running with Python manage.py run server. And then in your browser, oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's try going to some random URL. Bookmarks. Oh, we're still seeing that it works. We're not seeing anything else.
Karen, can you zoom in the web browser?
Yes, yes I can. It works, even bigger. Exciting. Yeah. Just a sec. All right, so in our editor, we want to edit urls.py, which is right here. Instead of all this, we're going to paste in a new set of URL patterns. So there's 3 patterns here. The first one refers to what happens if you go to just localhost :8000, the base URL. The second one is going to control what happens if you go to /bookmarks. And the last one controls /tags/ some sort of string, possibly with dashes in it or not. And that goes somewhere else. And so now, when we try to go to bookmarks, well, it knew there was a URL for that. It found our URLs and tried to go where we told it to go with our URLs, but view does not exist. We haven't, if we look back at this file, we told it when the user goes here, send them to this function. But we haven't written that function yet. And so we see a view does not exist error. Well, let's make that function exist. In your editor, let's go to bookmarks.views.py, and we'll feel free to copy and paste this from the wiki page. It's all there. In fact, maybe I will. We called our view function, it's bookmarks.views.index, so we need to make a function called index, which looks like that. Pretty simple. It's just going to send back some information. Now, once you save that, if we try this again, hey, now our URL and our view function are talking to each other. And if we go to bookmarks, we get, well, we don't get some bookmarks, but we get a string where there could be bookmarks. So that's kind of cool. Let's add a tag view the same way. So remember, in our urls.py, for when we have a tag, we told it to go to bookmarks.views.tag. So we need to make a function called tag as well to handle that. And because in our URL we capture a group, which is the name of the tag, so this URL will work for basically, we put whatever stuff we want in there, and then because it's in parentheses, we send that as an argument to our view function. And since we know it's supposed to be a tag name, we give it the name tag name. And then we return a HTTP response, which will tell us what tag we gave it. Because back in our urls.py, it's called capturing in regular expressions. We have this group, and it's like, okay, whatever's in these parentheses, I'm going to send. Okay, so now that we did that, let's try our tags view. So tags, awesome. Hey, that worked. La la la. That works too. Yes?
I just have a question on args versus keyword args.
Mm-hmm.
When I was playing around with Django and learning it, preparing for this, I stumbled onto the pages where you can actually name your arguments and pass them into your function.
Yep.
Name-based rather than just ordered.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any performance difference between name-based and just captured arguments?
No, I don't know the answer, actually. No. Yeah, I mean, this was definitely not an optimized app, or will not be, so.
But if it's about how to pass arguments, that'll make like 0.001% difference in the speed of your app in the worst case.
Sure, so why aren't you teaching it then as keyword arguments so that question over there you don't have to get asked? It'll just make more sense, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Sure. All right, so in our views, so this string is getting rendered as HTML. So if we want, we can even add a little bit of HTML. And that gets rendered like you would expect. Suddenly it's bold. All right. We've made a bunch of changes. We should probably save and commit our work. Get status. Yeah, it sees the changes both to our URLs function and our URLs file and our views file. Got them all staged. And we do a commit. So the placeholders that we created here, I mean, they demonstrate the principle, but you wouldn't actually want to make a real web page by making a giant string that had, you know, all sorts of HTML in it. That would get really unwieldy really fast. But fortunately, we don't have to do that because Django comes with a built-in template renderer. So First, we need to import something new. From Django.shortcuts, we import render. And then we'll modify our index function, make a dictionary called context, and instead of returning our HTTP response with just a string in it, we return render, and then it has 3 arguments: request, a string called index.html, and our context dictionary. Render is a shortcut function that Django provides you that takes these 3 dictionaries, or three arguments, including the context dictionary, which could have stuff in it. Right now, we don't have any context for it, so it's just blank. And instead of just returning a string hello world or whatever, it renders whatever template we gave it as the second argument and sends that back. So make sure our server is still running. And let's try going to localhost 8000 and see what happens. We get a shiny error. Template does not exist. So we gave it this argument, index.html, but we haven't made a template file named index.html yet. We haven't created any templates at all. So let's fix that. So from the command line, we are in my project. We need to make a directory called templates inside of our bookmarks app. So we can do that by typing make dir bookmarks / templates. And then, ow. You can see our folder here, yay. It doesn't have anything in it, so let's make a new file. How we do? Good, no one's dead. Where were we? We were making a template called index.html. And there's a bunch of HTML on the wiki. We'll just copy and paste that in. Because HTML, that's boring. So now that we've made this file, let's try loading the page again. Did I save? Hope I saved. It should remember. There we go. You might have to restart your server for it to notice that it changed. But after you restart your server, then everything should work. So you can put your templates anywhere if you want. You just have to tell settings.py, hey, this is where my templates live. And so there's a setting for that, FYI. But by default, in Django 1.4 and later, I believe, it will look for a folder called templates inside any of your apps. And so if you put it there, it'll just work.
That's why template doesn't have any
Yes. Yeah. If you wanted to put it somewhere special, that's where you'd change it. Okay, so let's rewrite. Let's first commit this. We want to make sure save our work. Git status. We want to add everything in bookmarks, including our new templates folder. And we'll make a new commit. Made a view that uses a template. All right. Our template, so we've got two views. We should make our tags view use a template as well. So I'll just copy and paste this over. So instead of our HTTP response craziness, we have a tag view. Now, our tag view is slightly different. Instead of just having a blank context dictionary, we're actually giving it a variable. So the key tag refers to the tag name that we got from our URL, and we pass that in. And now we need to make our tag template too, because otherwise it won't work. Tag. Why does it default to txt? Which is another giant block of HTML. And so there's a lot of stuff here, but the important thing to notice is the new thing about this template is it's got this wacky thing with double braces and then tag. And so in Django's templating language, to make a variable, print into the HTML, like show up there, the syntax for that is double brackets. And the way it's getting this thing called tag is from our view. Oops. Where we said tag corresponds to tag name. So that's how those two things work together. We can even test that out. And we see that the brackets thing gets filled in with our variable, as we expected. Yay. So you might have noticed, probably not, because we're just copying and pasting right now, but our two templates, our index.html template and our tag template, they share a lot of code. A lot of the stuff is the same between them. And repeating yourself like this is just no fun at all. So, and it's a recipe for having part of your website be up to date and part of your website looking like 1995. It's generally a bad plan. But fortunately, Django templates have a wonderful thing called inheritance. So the way that we're going to use that is we're going to make a new template file called base.html. And this template, none of our views refer to base.html anywhere. It's not called by anything. We're still making it. So I'll paste in some contents. And so it's got a lot of the same code that we saw before, but then it's got these crazy things called blocks, and the blocks of name. There's two blocks. One is called subheader, and the other one is called content. So base.html for us is going to hold just the generic HTML layout that we want all the rest of our templates to use. Let's modify index.html to inherit from the template. So instead of all this crazy HTML, we have three things. One, we tell it what template to inherit from. We want to inherit from base. We tell it that within the subheader block back in base.html, we want to put this content, all bookmarks. And finally, inside block content, we want to put our list of bookmarks, which right now is just some mocked up stuff. Tag, we're going to do something very similar. Instead of this, we have something much shorter. And so our header, so our subheader is going to have bookmarks tagged whatever tag instead of just nothing. Yeah. And now, if you go to your browser, uh-oh. Did I not save? I might not have saved. I didn't save. Huh. That's no good at all. All right, it looks exactly the same as before, but our tags view has far less code. And so does our index view. And any changes we make to base.html will automatically appear on both pages because index and tags are inheriting base. So as a general rule in Django, an important thing to remember is things with the weird bracket percentage sign stuff, those control the logic of the template, like I want these things to inherit from these other things, or I want to have a for loop and loop over something. All of that stuff goes in that kind of tags. While the things in whereas the things in just the double brackets, that's actually putting something into the template. Some sort of content is going to get printed there. So remembering the two kinds of tags and what they mean is helpful for guessing what the heck's going on. All right. So now we know how to make some basic HTML using Django's templating engine. If we want a good web application, though, we're probably going to want to include style sheets or JavaScript files, images, all sorts of static content. And so how do we include those? Well, we already have a sample static files folder that came with our project. If you cd ... we move up a directory. And we're back here again. Now, there's the sample static files folder. We want to move that somewhere more useful. So first, let's make a directory inside my project, inside our bookmarks app, called static. So we first make the directory, and then we're going to use git to move the contents of sample static files. So sample static files /star, make sure to include the star, to my project /bookmarks /static. And now, it's probably easier to see in your text editor, maybe. Now we can see there's the static folder inside bookmarks, and it's got some stuff in it. So Django, similar to the templates, Django automatically looks for a folder called static inside any of your Django apps. So that's where we're putting it for simplicity's sake. But you can, just like the templates, you can put static files wherever you want. You just have to tell Django where you put them. And again, that's where you do that in settings.py. So FYI. For consistency's sake, let's get back into my project since we want to spend most of the stuff we want to do is in there. Yep, we're in the right place. All right, let's modify our HTML template some to make them easier to style. So there's another big hunk of HTML on the wiki that we'll need to copy and paste. So this is our old template. Now, we've got some, in the header, we've got some links to some CSS files and stuff. We've got a container div and some other things, just to make it easier for our static files to work their magic. We'll also modify index.html. So we're going to leave the subheader alone, leave the inheritance line alone. We're just going to replace block content with a big thing of bookmarks, which has a link and some metadata that's all fake. Make that more interesting to look at. And we're also, so one thing we added in our new base is we added a block called bookmark widget, which is right now blank. But then when it gets inherited by index.html, it gets filled in with a form. Similarly, how was the code? Oh, you can name blocks whatever you want. And since base has a block named bookmark widget back here, anything that inherits from it can put stuff there. That's how it works. We could rename the block to whatever, and it would work the same way, assuming we changed it both places. In tag.html, we do a similar thing, just so it gets the same complicated bookmarks list instead of the simple one. All right. Having done all that, let's see what this looks like now. Oh, wow. Well, didn't quite manage to mean it to be so big, but you can get the idea. Okay. Well, it's my bookmarking app, and it's got this form where we can make bookmarks. Well, we can't yet because it doesn't work, but someday we can make bookmarks. And we've got this list of bookmarks with some fancy metadata and tags, and they're links. They're links that don't go anywhere yet, but links! Exciting! Great. Let's save and commit our work. Hit status. Look at all this stuff we modified. Everything inside bookmarks, including our new templates. Oops. And it includes where we moved our static files over, so that's part of this commit as well. Git move, git mv did that, added it to the commit for us, so that's why that's there. Commit, added static files, and more pretty templates. Yay. And that's the end of part 2. So, similar deal for part 3. How are people doing? Silence. Everyone's doing amazing. I can tell. No, really, how are you guys? Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a minute. There's another sync up point at the beginning of part 3. So, assuming you've been able to make branches, then we'll all be synced up. We're a little bit behind, so I want to make sure we stay on schedule. Ooh, interesting question. Okay, so that's all pasted in, and that's there. Oh, that's exciting. yeah, don't replace the whole thing, only replace block content. Sorry, I could have been more warning-y about that. Yeah.
Question while we're waiting.
Mhm.
The built-in development server has that static files server, so it serves those then on static file in the app.
Mhm.
When you run that in production, is there any way to configure that to do the same behavior, just quick and dirty, or because I'm finding that I have to run this collect static function in order to isolate those all into one place.
Yeah, I don't know that much about like the different middlewares act differently, and so I don't know that much about what the options are for that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it seems likely, but I don't know what it would be.
Sure.
Did you have a question? So we're all going to sync up and be based on the same code. So even if you didn't get all the way through part 2, git stash your changes if you're not already, if you haven't committed them, and you'll still have your stuff, but we can keep going. So right now, we're in my branch 2. We want to make a new branch, my branch 3. Git branch, my branch 3, origin, pre-part 3. And then we check out our new branch. And remember, if you run into an error on the checkout, it probably means that you've got something not committed in your current branch. You can just run git stash to stash away all your changes, and then it'll let you check out the new branch. Okay, so we've made some URLs. We've been able to have this interface between the browser and Django being like, these are the paths we care about, and send people someplace if they go to /bookmarks or whatever. And we've made some basic views, and we've made some templates. We even have some static files so we can style the templates to look how we want. But so far, we haven't done anything that you couldn't already do with just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like JavaScript even has routers that are pretty similar. So let's fix that. We're going to do something that, well, okay, Node, whatever, notwithstanding, you couldn't do with JavaScript, at least client side. So one thing that clearly separates web apps from just web pages is that apps typically store data somewhere. And the code that runs the apps chooses what data is most important. And so when writing an app using Django, we're going to configure what this data looks like and where it's stored using Django models. Every Django app comes with a models.py file, which lists the different kinds of data that you want to store. And they're configured through Python classes. And these, like, there's a Django ORM, object relation mapper, which translates between these Python classes and the junk in the database. So we don't actually have to know any SQL to still be able to use a database, which is pretty great, because I'm really bad at SQL. Yeah, so we're going to make our first models. The way we do that is, remember this models.py that got created automatically when we made our app inside bookmarks. We'll open that up. Right now it's blank. And so let's think about it. We're making a bookmarks application. It's going to be really simple. And so what attributes do we want our bookmarks to have? Well, a bookmark definitely has a URL. Otherwise, what's the point of a bookmark without a link? It might have a title, maybe. Probably want a timestamp for when we made the bookmark. And then we'll probably also want tags. So we'll have a separate tag object. That's pretty simple. We'll just have the tag be, okay, a slug, like a name, whatever the tag is. And the tag also needs to know what bookmarks it's applying to. So how do we represent that information in a Django model? So in models.py, we have some code here, and I'm just going to copy and paste for speed's sake. You can delete, create your models here. We'll make a class called bookmark, and it's inheriting from the built-in Django model class, so it gets all of Django stuff. But in addition, has these extra attributes. So we've got a URL, which is a URL field, which is a Django provided, it's like a character field, but actually checks that it's a URL. Timestamp, so that's a date time field, and we have this option auto now add equals true. What that means is when this model is created, by default, make the timestamp the time that it was created. And then finally, we have a title, which is a character field. It has a maximum length of 200 characters. It's okay if it's blank. And by default, if we don't give it a title, if we just want to put in a URL and we don't care about giving it a title, it'll just default to a blank string. Now let's add a tag model. So in the same file, below the bookmarks file, or model, we'll make a tag model. And it's got two attributes. I'll talk about the second one first. The slug is a character field, just like the title, only the maximum length is a little shorter, only 50 characters. And it's got unique equals true, which means that we can only have one tag object with a given slug. You can't have two tag objects that are both cats or awesome. You can only have one awesome. The other one is a little more interesting. We've got this bookmarks attribute that is a many-to-many field. And so what that is, well, okay. So in relational databases, a little background, there's two basic types of relationships, approximately, just conceptually. There's one's called a foreign key relationship, which means that one model is relating to one and only one other model. So like if you had a car model and a wheel model, each wheel belongs to only one car. So you would have a foreign key relationship between the wheel and the car. The car, on the other hand, could have as many wheels as it wants. It could have 4, it could have 10, maybe it's a semi-truck, whatever. Yeah. Versus a many-to-many field, the relationship isn't exclusive for either of the models involved. So like if you had a pizza model and a topping model, each pizza can have multiple toppings. But similarly, each topping can be on multiple pizzas. You can have several pizzas with pepperoni on them, maybe some of them also pineapple on them. You've got this more complicated many-to-many relationship. And so there's other variants of these fields that I'm not going to go into, but those are the two basic types. And in this case, each bookmark we know can have multiple tags. We don't want to tag our bookmarks with just one tag. And similarly, a tag can have multiple bookmarks. You can have multiple bookmarks tagged awesome. If you had to have, unique tags for each bookmark, then they're a lot less useful. So we use a many-to-many field to store that information. So when you first create your models, you might not always know exactly which fields to list here. Maybe you'll change your mind later. Maybe someday you'll have like preview thumbnail images for your URLs. Who knows? And then you'd want to be able to add a field to the model to store that information. Or maybe you'll decide tracking timestamps is silly and you want to delete that field. There's all sorts of changes you might want to make. Unfortunately, Django and most database using web app software can't handle model changes very well on its own in terms of translating those to the database. It gets kind of complex. But fortunately, there's a Django app called South that we installed earlier that can handle these database changes for us, which makes it a lot easier, at least in simple cases. So now that we've made this first version of our models file, hit save, we're going to set up our bookmarks app to work with South so that we can use South migrations with it in the future. Well, the way that we do that is from the command line, python manage.py schema migration bookmarks, and then we have an argument -- initial. It means we're doing it for the first time. Run that. There's a lot of stuff, and it actually creates a folder with some files in it for us. If we look inside bookmarks, there's now a migrations folder, and the migrations folder has some files in it. So we created the migration file, but we still have to apply it. It's a two-step process with migrations. And the way that we do that is python manage.py migrate bookmarks. Note that if you didn't successfully run syncdb earlier, This probably won't work. So if you run into that error, tell a TA and they can show you how to fix it. Or I can. Is that a broad issue? Okay. The way that you handle this, if you haven't run syncdb already, what you want to do is copy your entire model file and erase it. Make sure you keep it copied. Or you can just get it back from the wiki, it's okay. We want this to be blank so that syncdb doesn't get confused. Then run python manage.py syncdb. And that'll take care of every other application in Django, which we're not using migrations for. Including South, so this does have to be done at least once. And then after you've done that, we can breathe again, paste back your models, and then go through the migration steps. Okay? Does that work? Maybe. The reason why you leave the models blank is if you don't do that, Python syncdb will try to also sync your bookmarks app. And the thing about South is once you've synced an app using the regular syncdb, you can't use migrations with South with it anymore, and it just becomes a giant headache. So that's why you want to do them in a specific order. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's commit our work. It's provided to manage.py via South. So it wouldn't be there by default, but because we have South installed, it has it. Yeah. All right, so we want to add our models, since we edited that. And we also want to add our migrations folder and all the stuff inside it. So there's our models, and there's the files inside migrations, all ready to be committed. Made, bookmark, models, and our first migration. All right, that's going to be the last commit for a while, because now, once you've got all that done, we can start playing with actually making some bookmarks and putting them in our database. Actually, so we're at almost 10:30. How about we take, I think they're actually providing snacks or something. There's like a break. And this is actually a pretty good place to take a break. So let's take 15 minutes. We can start part 4. Remember, we're starting another branch for each part. So on the 4th page of the tutorial, it's called CRUD. Yeah, this section is all about, so if you're not familiar with the acronym CRUD, it stands for create, read, update, and delete, which are the 4 basic operations that any web app is going to have. You want to be able to create stuff, you want to be able to see them, you want to update them or edit them or change them, and then finally delete them. So those 4 are pretty standard. We have reading bookmarks covered. We're now showing our bookmarks on the page, but this section is about creating bookmarks, so making new ones from the web interface. So that we're on the same page, let's do the git branch thing. Git branch, my branch 4. Oops. Don't hit enter too quickly like I did. There we go. We want to create it based on origin pre-part 4. There we go. All right. So we're going to do this first just using an HTML form, but with some help from Django. And then secondly, we're going to change it to use Ajax, or something like Ajax, using JavaScript to update the bookmarks list and create new bookmarks without reloading the page. But first, we'll do it the boring way. So Django comes with a built-in form class, which makes it really easy to build forms that have validation and other functionality already built in. There are plain Django.forms classes, which are just forms plus the stuff. And then there's a thing called Django model forms, which create a form for you. You give it a model, and it creates a form based on that model for you, based on some defaults, which is pretty cool. So we're going to use model forms for our app today. So first, we're going to need to make a file inside our bookmarks app. We'll make a new file, and we'll call it forms.py. We could have put this in models or somewhere random, but having your forms in their own file is just good for sanity. Right now it's blank, so we need to, from Django, import forms. And from our models, we need to import our bookmark. And then we make a Python class called bookmark form, which inherits from model form. And it's got this meta class. It's kind of weird, but this is how Django does namespace config stuff. And we just tell it the model we want you to build this form off of is the bookmark model. So 3 lines. Let's add the form to our views and templates. So in views.py, we want to import our form so that we can use it. Oops. And then inside index, form equals a new bookmark form. Oops, and we need to add it to our context as well. Then we need to edit index so it actually uses this form. So right now we've got this mock-up form that we've had there the whole time. It doesn't actually do anything. Let's replace it. So instead of these, well, here, let's just copy and paste the whole block, then I'm less likely to screw something up. Yeah, so instead of the form fields that we had that we wrote there, we have this call, which is using the form object that we set here, and then as p is a method that makes the form appear with each field inside a paragraph. So there's a couple different ways you can have your forms get spat out on the page. You can have it be in a table, you can have it be in divs, you can have it be in list items. It's got a bunch of different built-ins for depending on how you want to put your form on the page. We also added a check to see if there's a user logged in. Because if there's no user logged in, we don't want just random anonymous weirdos making bookmarks. We only want to show the form if someone's logged in. Great. This is almost going to work. There's one thing we still need, and it's called a CSRF token. It's a little bit of code built into Django that protects your site from cross-site request forgeries. It tells Django that if it thinks that if it gets a post and it looks like it's from this form, it helps Django to know, yes, this post really came from this form, really came from this website. It's not some other website pretending to be this website and just like making junk bookmarks for you or something. And the way Django is set up by default, it actually won't let you submit a form to it that doesn't have this token. It's like, dude, you're crazy. Where's my security? So the way we add the token is just under the form line. We add a template tag that's CSRF underscore token. You should also notice that, maybe you already did, that here's our form. It doesn't include the actual form tag. So we had to make that ourselves. We also had to make the submit button ourselves. That doesn't come with it. That's basically to make it easy to customize without having to get into the nitty-gritty of forms. So you can have things like titles before the body of the form. If you didn't want it to say submit, if you wanted to say enter, or, oops. Oh, that's a typo. That's no good at all. Okay, that's more like it. If you want your button to say something else, then you don't have to be like, hey, Django, why'd you give me the submit button that I don't want? You just make it yourself. All right, so let's look at what that did. So here's how our form looked like before when it was just a mock-up. Oh, hey, that's been wrong for a while. Now, if we, oh, that's exciting. Form is not defined. Oh, yeah, that is supposed to be there. It definitely is in the wrong place. Come on, please. Wait, no, it looks right. Yeah, no, it's in bookmarks. That's not the issue. Form. Sorry? Uh-huh. Ah. Yeah, that would be wrong. I wonder if that's the only thing I did wrong. Yeah, we're sending, okay, it's being sent as form. So that was probably what we did wrong. Ha! Yes, thank you. Good eye. Yeah, so it auto-created a form for us with the 3 fields that it knows about for bookmarks, right? Author, URL, and title. So that's kind of cool. It still won't do anything, though, if we submit it. Like, it's just like, whatever. You hit a submit button. We don't care. So we need to change our views function in order to be able to do something when it gets a post. Because right now, all it ever does is return a template and be done with it. So the way that we'll do that is, first, we need to add another import, redirect, which we're going to be using soon. Up here. And then we'll check, so if we get a request and the method by which we got it was post instead of get, which is standard, what we've usually been getting, then we make a bookmark form, but instead of making it blank, we feed it the request.post, which in it contains the arguments it got when you posted the form. The form processes those, and if everything is valid, then isValid will be true. Sanitization also happens at the isValid step. Then we can run form.save, and because it's a model form, it automatically creates a new model based on the data that we posted. And then return, redirect, index. So we're using our redirect after the post to send us back to the index. All right, let's see what that did. Oh, no, I don't want to do that yet. Okay, everything still loads. Hey! It worked! That's so cool! Let's make one with the title. That works too. That's awesome. All right. So we've got a real working form. We can make bookmarks here instead of only being able to make them inside the Python shell. That's really useful. But this form, it's okay, but it doesn't look like our mockup did. It's got this author field, which we didn't really want, and it doesn't have a tags field either. So let's customize our model form a bit so that it has all the fields we want and none of the fields we don't. So first, we want to make the default author be whoever's logged in. You don't want to be able to specify the author being someone else. That's kind of a giant security flaw if you care what your bookmarks are. So inside the view, now we're already there. Here, where we specify the bookmark form, we're going to pass it some initial arguments. So initial equals, and then there's a dictionary. We'll say the author should be yeah, let's make it current user variable, because why not? Current user equals, oops, request.user. So that's how we get, if someone's logged in, request.user will be them. And then we pass it in here. So now, if we reload this, hey, it's already set to me. So, step one. Now, of course, this field is still here, so I could manually select something else, so that if there were more users, that wouldn't be so great. Fortunately, we can fix this. Let's hide the author field. So inside forms.py, here, we're going to add another bit of information to this meta class called widgets. And widgets lets you manually set what kind of form field each of your model fields corresponds to. So there's some pretty sensible defaults. Like it gave us a text input for the URL and for the title, and a drop-down for which author to choose, given that it's a choice, isn't the worst default in the world, but we just don't want that there. So instead of that, we'll tell it the author field, should instead use this kind of widget, a hidden input. Oops, I can't spell. Hidden input widget, which means, well, it'll be hidden and you can't see it. Ha! Now we can still make a bookmark, and it'll still have the right person listed as the author, but we don't see it listed here. If we could look at the source, and it would be somewhere in here. Oh, here we go. Input type hidden. No, wait, that's the CSRF token. Title. Oh, huh. Okay, never mind, it's stored by the model form. I thought it went to the HTML, but apparently not. Cool. Oh, maybe I'm just looking at the wrong thing. Oh, okay. That makes sense. Sorry? Oh, so I'm in Chromium right now, and it's, where'd my mouse go? There it is. You can just click on anything and go down to inspect element, and Really handy. All right, so we hit the field. That's pretty cool. Let's commit and save and commit our changes. Made a working model form and hid the author attribute from it. Okay. So this is so close to what we want, but the last thing we wanted was the ability to just add tags right there. And there's no tags field. So we need to add one. The way that we do that is we go back to our forms. Oh, hi, I'm already there. Our forms.py, and we're going to make an explicit call to fields. So this is telling the form which fields we definitely want this form to have. We could use this to exclude some fields altogether. In this case, we're actually using it to add a field that normally wouldn't be added. The other thing we have to do is actually specify what we expect to go in that field. So we make a tags field, we make it a character field, let's say 100, and it's not required. You don't have to have tags if you don't want them. Yeah, this is what it looks like to create a field manually using Django forms if you weren't using a model form. If we weren't using a model form, we would have had to do that for all our fields. But since it's a model form, it did it for us. Because it's not an attribute of a bookmark. So if we made a similar form for creating a new tag has a bookmarks attribute, but bookmark doesn't. You can still access it via tag set, but that doesn't get in here. Okay. Now, so model forms, as you remember, does saving for us, which is really nice. If you hit save on the form, it saves a new bookmark, and that's super cool. But it doesn't really know what to do with this tags field. It's just going to ignore it. So it's not going to, the field will be there in the form. We can actually look at that right now. No. There's a field, but nothing's on the other end of it. If we try to put tags in it, right now they're not going to get saved. So we can edit our view function to make sure they get saved. So this is a lot of code. I'm going to copy everything after. So if form is valid, then do a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to copy and paste that. Oh, maybe not. That's really messy. Okay, I'll do it by hand. So we still have a form save, but we assign, so that returns the bookmark it just saved. So we're going to assign that to a variable so we can use it later. Then raw tags, formed, cleaned, data. So we're getting, from the form, after validation, we're getting whatever was in tags. And we'll split it on the commas. Exactly. So you can enter multiple tags and just put commas between them. Okay. If there's anything in there, this is a little verbose, but whatever. If there are any for each one, we're going to do a bunch of processing. Strip. This is getting rid of extra white space on the ends. This is any internal spaces are going to get replaced with hyphens. We're also going to make them all lowercase. Everyone likes lowercase. Some final escaping just because, why not? Since we're using URL lib, we have to import it. Don't want to forget to do that. It's a Python built in, not a big deal. And then we can use tag objects get or create, which is another awesome method. Yeah, so the get or create function on tag.objects does what you would think. It tries to get a tag with the specified thing, and if it doesn't find one, instead of erroring, it creates it for you. And it returns a tuple, which is why we have this weird tag comma created thing. The tag is the tag that it comes back with. Created is whether that tag is brand new or whether it's old. Finally, save our tag. And then we add our new bookmark. So now our new bookmark is tagged with our possibly brand new, or maybe not tagged. A lot of things going on here. Yeah. We could have gone without some of this and just been sad if anyone entered any weird tag data that had characters we weren't expecting. But why not? All right, let's see if that worked. Load this. Hey! It made a bookmark, and what's more, it tagged it with the right things, both with tags that already existed and some tags that are brand new. And so we can see, well, there's only one tagged with that, but it's more tagged with that. Cool. All right. This is a good time to save, since things are working. We made our bookmarks form make and save tags. Cool. So that's creating a HTML form in Django. The next bit, we're going to do the same thing, still using the model form on the back end, but using JavaScript to handle the post instead of doing a reload of the page every time. So first, we're going to have to tell our templates to import some JavaScript files. So we'll have to edit our base.html file in order to do that. So here, we've got our style sheets. After those, we'll paste in some JavaScript files, which are in here. One's jQuery. We're not going to be editing that. The other one we actually care about is script.js. Right now it's blank. If we reloaded the page, nothing would be different. So I'm going to just copy and paste this. Please follow. Do the same, because otherwise it's a lot to write. Especially if you may or may not know JavaScript. You may or may not be better at it than me. But this is just a quick and dirty script that when the form gets submitted, instead of reloading, it tries to send some data, and if it succeeds, then it's going to prepend something to our bookmarks list. Let's see if that works. Reload the page. Eek, that's not so good. That's exciting. What changed? Oh, I think I know what I did wrong. There's a blank tag because I screwed up. And now it's making everything sad. Well, this is a good lesson. Don't do that. But you can fix it. So we need to get the blank tag where slug equals nada. Yeah, that's what we want. Call it T. And we want T to go away because it's confusing everything. Now, if we do tags.objects.all, it's no longer listed. We did t.delete, so it's gone. So now, phew, good. It's not broken anymore. That's exciting. Yeah. Anyway, so we've got a form, and we can even see it actually submitted twice. It worked to some extent. It worked, since we actually have two of the same bookmark here. But it's not actually reloading properly to actually show our bookmarks. Show our new bookmark in the list. It's just freaking out. So there's a few ways we could fix this. We could make views.py, instead of doing this redirect thing, we could have it send back a JSON serialization of bookmark data, and then the JavaScript could take that JSON dictionary thing and turn that into a bookmark and then place it on the page. That'd be kind of cool. But it takes a lot of rendering, and the template, you would probably want some sort of JavaScript templating engine to handle that, and suddenly we're getting all sorts of dependencies. So let's not do that. Instead, we'll do it a simpler way for now. We're just going to have Django do the template render for us, send it to the JavaScript, and then JavaScript just puts it in the page. So if you've heard of Ajax, or AJAJ more, which is actually more common, instead of XML, we're using JSON, so it's a J instead of an X. This is AHA, or asynchronous HTML and HTTP, where we're just trading bits of HTML over the internet asynchronously. That's how we'll make it work today. So let's make a new template file to make this a little easier. So in templates, new file called bookmark.html. So an index we have all of this that's, an individual bookmark. Copy it and paste in here. Now notice, unlike all our other templates so far, it's not inheriting anything. It's just a chunk of HTML. And we'll see why later. Now, in index, let's delete all that. Ha ha ha. And instead, use an include tag. And refer to bookmark.html. Now if we reload, yeah, it should look exactly the same. Still using the same HTML. It's just getting loaded in a slightly different way. Yeah, the include tag, what that means is just take this template from somewhere else and drop it in with whatever context variables you already have. So our bookmark.html is getting rendered with the bookmark inside the for loop. Gets plopped there, and every time you go through the for loop, it does this again and again. So a little more compact on index, which is kind of nice. And it means we can reuse bookmark.html even without rendering the entire index template, which is what we're going to need to do now. So in views.py, down here, after all this raw tags nonsense, we'll do a check to see if the request is Ajax. It's a built-in method that looks at browser headers, or not browser, damn it, HTTP headers, and can generally figure out if something's coming from a JavaScript call or not. And if it is, then we return something else. We return render request bookmark.html and a very short context. Bookmark, and that's our new bookmark. Yeah. So this only gets called if we get through all this. So the form was valid and we saved it. But if we did succeed in creating a new bookmark, it sends back a giant chunk of HTML to our JavaScript file. So finally, if we edit this, instead of that nonsense, beep. If there were any errors, we would hide them. That might come up later. But more importantly, this data that we got back, this giant chunk of HTML, we're going to prepend to bookmarks. And I want to just make sure. Just in case. All right. Let's reload this. Hey! It appeared. And we didn't even reload. It's a little hard to tell because it's a local server, but if we're on a remote server, the latency would be so much lower. So it works with titles and without titles. That's pretty cool. Okay. Great. All right, let's see what happens. So all these attempts, we've been filling in the URL field. Let's see what happens if we leave it out. Oy. Yes, that is what happens if we leave it out. If we look at our view logic, if the form isn't valid, we just redirect them to index, which means we send to our JavaScript file the entirety of index.html rendered again. So that's not so great. We should probably fix that. It doesn't, our view doesn't properly handle the case where it is a post, but there's some errors. So let's fix that. So instead of redirect, we'll tab out here. So if form is valid, do a bunch of stuff. Else, if it's not, we want to do something else. Yikes. Now let's save that. Oops. Get out of here. And now, instead of doing something crazy, like loading your app inside your app, it complains with a somewhat helpful error message that, hey, you need a URL. If we could go to more effort, if we wanted to do more effort, we could have sent back the errors as JSON and then have our callback function do something special with it instead of just sticking it in the same place that it would have stuck a bookmark. Like if you wanted the error message to be in the form, you could send it back in a different data format and then JavaScript could take care of that for you. Or there's a few other ways you can do it. But we'll run with this for now since it's simpler. Yeah, let's save and commit. So in the real world, if you were doing a lot of JavaScript mixing and matching, manipulating objects on the page, instead of this, you'd probably want to be using a JavaScript framework instead of just a hacky script, like Backbone or something like that. You'd be wanting to use templates for lots of different things that your JavaScript is trying to manipulate. And so getting that side, the JavaScript side, to work nicely with the Django side, there's a lot of different approaches people have taken to making that work. One is to use Django primarily as an API, like data engine, and just like have it spew out lots of JSON and leave all or almost all the rendering on the JavaScript heavy pages to JavaScript templates. And so TastyPie is a popular Django application for turning your models and turning all your stuff into APIs really easily. So if that's an approach that you would want for your app, that would be one route to go. Another route that people have taken is teaching Django to speak the same templating language as some popular JavaScript templating languages. So there's two projects, Django handlebars or Django bars, which are both teaching Django to speak handlebars. So you can write all your templates in handlebars, and both your JavaScript and your Django can render them equally well. At least that's the idea. All right, that's the end of part 4. Yes. Yes. Send me the link. What? Or, okay.
The other, I can add in the bookmark. Here, bookmark that.
You could try.
Yeah. If you guys are interested in things, take a minute to walk down and deploy this to real life.
Well, or you can after syncing. Come on. No. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, the instructions in part 6 there contain information on how to deploy this solution and comment that on the things of it, like do you want to see Karen demo it? Do you guys want to just do it yourself? So basically, there's 12 20, just 11 surveys, and if you stick around, you walk in the flow through it, you take about 10 minutes. You end up being late for lunch, so maybe you'll miss something else right.
Yeah, so there's tons more material on the wiki. Section 5 was just going to be playing around, styling it. Right now you're all just using the basic CSS and stuff that I put together, but I'm sure you'd want to customize it so it doesn't just say, like, my bookmarking app. Like, what kind of title is that? So there's a lot of things that you can do just to play around and make it your own, and then share it with the world, which is what Section 6 is about. And finally, there's Section 7, which has a bunch of different sort of mini modules for different sorts of things. Like if you're curious about relational databases, which is what's underneath the models.py, there's a section on that. If you're curious about what regular expressions are and how the heck do they work, there's a section about that. What else is there? There's a bunch of different stuff. Hopefully all extremely exciting. Exercises for the reader, yes. Writing your own tests, so test-driven development, it's a good idea. We obviously didn't do it here, but you can do better. And so there's a module there about how to write your own tests and some sample tests to help you get started with that. Yeah. But the most important thing is to fill out the exit survey because we want to know what you think. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Sorry it was a little rocky, especially in the beginning, but I hope you learned something and had a reasonably entertaining time.